You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start by recapping yesterday's 3 NBA playoff games. I'll start with Bucks Heat. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, though, because that game, like this whole series, has been an absolute joke. The Miami Heat look flat. They look dead to the world. They look disinterested. They are putting up no resistance whatsoever. Quite honestly, you could put the Houston Rockets out there instead of the Heat, and they'd put up a better fight. You're down 2-0 headed into that game. I get that. That's bad, that's tough to come back from. But you're in Miami. You're in front of your hometown crowd. The American Airlines Arena is rocking. You've got to think to yourself, you know what? If we can take this game, we've got a good chance of coming back. You don't want to fall behind 3-0, but 2-1 is a lot more manageable. Instead, the Heat decided not to show up. They had no offense to speak of whatsoever. I'll give Jimmy Butler credit. He had 19 points. Bam Adebayo was solid in the interior, although his mid-range game was non-existent. It's been that way throughout this whole series. Tyler Hero no-showed. Goran Dragic no-showed. Duncan Robinson no-showed. Nemanja Bjelica had 14 points, give him credit, but the Miami Heat, as a team, shot just 38% from the field and 28% from beyond the arc. This is a Heat team that, in the bubble, beat the Bucks. They did a really good job frustrating Milwaukee. I mean, it got to the point where you heard some people calling for Mike Budenholzer's head. If you didn't think that the Heat were going to win this series, that's fine. But you had to think that they'd put up a fight. They look absolutely dead to the world. Game 1, they have every opportunity to win, and they can't. Game 2, you lose by 34 points. Game 3, hallelujah, you only lose by 29 points. The Miami Heat, in every game in this series, haven't cracked 100 points in regulation. Think about how tough that is. Think about the way that the NBA is. Much more offense-oriented than defense-oriented. And you haven't cracked 100 points in 4 quarters. I'm not asking for 110. I'm not asking for 120. I'm asking for 100. The bare minimum of what should be considered acceptable in the NBA. No team in the NBA this year averaged less than 103 points. I'm just asking for 100 points. If you want to try to lock down the Bucks defensively, fine, you can do that. We're seeing a similar strategy by the Knicks against the Hawks. But the Knicks have managed to score. They've put up 100 points in their 2 games. The Miami Heat are playing the worst basketball that they've played all year. I mean, let me tell you, if the Miami Heat didn't make the NBA Finals last year, I'd consider the possibility of advocating Eric Spoelstra being fired. That's how terrible the Heat look right now. These have been inexcusable performances by the Heat. If I know anything about Pat Riley, he's furious right now. I saw some people saying, oh, don't get on the Heat too much. They're without Victor Oladipo. Blah, blah, blah. I'll give you that for Game 1. You can make the argument that Victor Oladipo would have been the difference maker in Game 1. It may not get to overtime. The Heat may win it in regulation. I'll give you that, but Game 2 and Game 3, it wouldn't have mattered. Any way you slice it, the Heat would be down in this series. Maybe the scores would be a little more respectable, but the Heat still wouldn't look that good. The reality is, this series isn't as much about the Bucks as it is the Heat. Any team in the NBA could beat the Heat right now in a 7-game series. The Rockets, the Pistons, the Magic, the Thunder, the Cavs, it doesn't matter. The Bucks just happen to be reaping the benefits of it. I'm not knocking the Bucks. They're a good team. They're playing good basketball. But this series isn't as much about the Bucks as it is the Heat. And the absolutely dismal performance that they've put out in all 3 games. You cannot overstate the ineptitude of this Heat team. Serious changes are going to need to be made. Dragic, gone. Ariza, gone. Iguodala, gone. Dedmon, gone. And maybe even more than that. The Bucks are going to sweep the Heat tomorrow. There's no question about that in my mind. Moving on now to Suns-Lakers. The story here is that Chris Paul once again had a really quiet game, absolutely non-existent. In 27 minutes, he only had 7 points. Monty Williams said before this game that Paul is 100%. His shoulder is fully healed. So if we're to believe that, and I'm not calling Monty Williams a liar, I like Monty Williams, I think he should win Coach of the Year, there's no reason why Paul should have scored just 7 points. And that's his high in this series. The guy hasn't even scored 8 points. I mean, if the shoulder is still affecting him, that's fine, but then don't say that it isn't. The guy looks like Cliff Paul out there. I mean, my God. You know who's really impressed me in this series? Cameron Payne. He's really stepped up and is sort of replacing Paul's output a little bit. I mean, Payne is doing what you want him to do. It's just that Paul is still playing over 20 minutes a game. If Chris Paul isn't 100%, and this is the Chris Paul we're getting when he's at 99% or less, then Paul can't play. Okay? It's just that simple. It's okay if you're hurting. It's admirable that you want to play through it, but at the end of the day, you're really hurting your team here. Let's give those minutes to someone else. I'm not knocking Paul. I like Paul. Chris Paul's a future Hall of Famer. One of the best point guards in NBA history. But it's clear that he's hurting the Phoenix Suns right now. He's a veteran. He should know better than that. If this is his output when trying to gut it out, let's see what someone who's at 100% can do. I give the Lakers credit. They did play well. Anthony Davis had a double-double. LeBron had 21 points. Dennis Schroeder had 20. Kyle Kuzma nearly had a double-double. Andre Drummond was dominant in the interior. 11 rebounds in 20 minutes. That's pretty impressive. But I will say this. This game almost ended with a black mark on it. Dennis Schroeder was going up for a layup at the end of the game, and Devin Booker pushed him in midair. Now, ultimately, nothing came of it. Schroeder was perfectly fine. He ended up doing some push-ups after that. Devin Booker was given a flagrant 2. It was handled correctly by everyone involved. Schroeder didn't retaliate. He ended up doing push-ups. The referees did the right thing by giving Booker a flagrant 2. At the end of the day, you can't do that. You can't push someone midair. Maybe in the 1980s, it was looked on a little more favorably, but you just can't do that now. It will be interesting to see if there's any retaliation. I don't think there will be in the early part of Game 4. Maybe at the end of the game, someone will go after Booker. I mean, Davis was upset about it after the game. Anthony Davis called it a dirty play. And you know what? He's right. You can't have that. Dennis Schroeder could have gotten seriously hurt. It'll be interesting to see what kind of retaliation there is, if any. Moving on now to Nuggets Trailblazers. A really, really close game. A very good game. This has been a really good series. Both teams played really well. The Nuggets clamped down on D, like I said they needed to do. The Blazers shot just 31% from beyond the arc. But guys like Norman Powell, Melo, and Yusuf Nurkic did step up and have good games. This was a 5-point game. This was a close game all throughout. The biggest lead in the game was by the Nuggets. They led by 12. That's not an insurmountable deficit. I mean, the big story of this game is Austin Rivers coming up really clutch. In the fourth quarter, he had 4 3-pointers. He hit a dagger 3 with like 80 seconds left to put the Nuggets up by 8. Rivers finished with 21 points. yesterday. To put that in perspective, his high this season was 25. He did it against the Jazz and Knicks. Here's a guy who's averaging 8 points a year. Between the Knicks and the Nuggets, he did nothing for the Knicks. I really didn't like him. He goes to the Nuggets and does that in winning time? I mean, that's impressive. Austin Rivers took over that game. If you had told me that a guard was going to take over late, I would have said, wow, the Blazers came back. Damian Lillard in Dame time, winning time, stepped up. No, it was Austin Rivers. Give both teams credit. They played well. The Blazers do need to do a better job on the perimeter, both in terms of making their own shots and defending the Nuggets shots. The Nuggets shot 53% from beyond the arc. That's not going to work. You can't have Austin Rivers torching you from 3 in the fourth quarter. I thought this would be a really exciting series. Games 1 and 2 didn't turn out that way, but you know what? Yesterday's game did. I hope we get more of that. I'll say this, the Blazers need to win tomorrow. If the Blazers don't, the Nuggets are winning this series. You can't lose 2 at home and expect to come back from 3-1 down. That's not going to work. But now it's time to preview tonight's 3 games. I'll start with Knicks-Hawks. If the Knicks are going to win this game, Julius Randle needs to get off to a better start. Because Randle was non-existent all throughout Game 1, and in Game 2, he only had like 2 points in the first half. That's not going to work. Randle needs to step up and be the best player on this Knicks team. It's great that Derrick Rose has stepped up. It's great that RJ Barrett has stepped up. It's great that Alec Burks has stepped up. It's great that Obi Toppin has stepped up. That's all from a Knicks perspective. From my perspective, I hate it. I'm rooting for the Hawks harder than anyone in this state. But Randle needs to be the guy. He was the all-star. He's the best player on the team. He needs to act like it. He needs to get off to a big start. He came alive in the second half of Game 2. Let's see if he can carry that momentum over to Game 3. As for the Hawks, Trae Young needs to get to the free throw line more. The Hawks have gone through periods in these 2 games where they've struggled to score. The Knicks are just clamping down on defense. You're not going to beat this Knicks defense. It's too good. Instead, you work around it. How do you work around it? By getting to the free throw line. You put one of the best free throw shooters in the NBA on the line every chance you get. And this game is in Atlanta. Don't tell me that referees aren't swayed by that. They are swayed by the home crowd. There's no question about that. If Young draws contact and they don't call it, they're going to hear it. And they're going to hear it loudly. Trae Young made the most free throws in the NBA this year with 484. You know how many free throws he's attempted in these 2 games? 13. That's 6.5 per game. That's below his 8.7 average. He's got to get to the free throw line more. It's just that simple. Look, I'm going to be rooting for the Hawks hard. You know I will. I hate the Knicks with a burning passion. But I did say Knicks in 5 before the series started. So, I kind of have to go with the Knicks. Moving on now to Nets Celtics. And we know what the Nets need to do if they want to win this game. Play through the big three. Get the supporting cast going offensively. Get them open looks. They've got to hit those open looks. We know that. Instead, I want to focus on Jeff Green. Green is going to be out for at least 10 days with a strained plantar fascia. That's in his left foot. Green's a big part of what the Nets do. He's a stretch 5. He enables them to stretch the floor when Blake Griffin needs a rest. You were hoping that this injury wouldn't be that serious, but 10 days in the playoffs, that's tough. I mean, again, it could be worse. All due respect to Green, and I love Uncle Jeff, I really do. He's not irreplaceable. Realistically, all you have to do is increase Nick Claxton's minutes and put in a guy like Alize Johnson. I'd say DeAndre Jordan, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see Claxton and Jordan sharing the floor. Claxton and Johnson, that can work. Harden, Shamet, Brown, Johnson, Claxton, I could see it. Harden needs to be more aggressive in making opportunities for himself, but it could work. I like Alize Johnson. Really, really good rebounder. And good defensively, too. As for the Celtics, they've got to get more production from their bench. Jeff Green is probably the best player that the Nets have coming off their bench. This is a golden opportunity for the Celtics. So can Robert Williams step up again? Can Jabari Parker step up? Can Aaron Nesmith step up? Can Peyton Pritchard step up? Can Romeo Langford step up? Can Grant Williams step up? The Celtics bench has been an issue all year. I like the idea of filling it out with younger players. In theory, it should have worked, but it didn't. But this is their moment. There's a golden opportunity here for the Celtics bench to step up. I don't think they're going to do it, though. I think the Nets are going to put a stranglehold on this series. I'll be interested to see if there are any stories of racist taunts coming from the Boston crowd, because that is a thing, despite what Danny Ainge may say. Marcus Smart even said that it happens. Okay, it's well known that some Boston fans will make racist remarks. I'm not saying all Boston fans. Most are good fans. They're bad winners, though. You've heard the term bad losers? They're bad winners. I echo Kyrie's sentiment in hoping that this is a game solely focused on basketball and nothing else. The Nets are going to win. I don't think there's a question about that. The last NBA game to talk about is Clippers-Mavericks. This series may be over already, but if it's not, the Clippers need to win tonight. If they don't, forget about it. They're not coming back from 3-0 down. If the Clippers are going to win, their defense needs to step up. Alright, you've got to do a better job containing Luka, as hard as it is, and I know it's hard. A lot easier said than done. You have two of the best defensive players in the NBA on your team, in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. In both of these games, Luka Doncic has scored over 30 points. That's absolutely inexcusable. Is Luka capable of going off? The answer is yes. But when you're a team with great defenders like Kawhi and George, you've got to do better than that. As for the Mavericks, I'm going to change what I said about Tim Hardaway Jr. I said before Game 2 that what he did in Game 1, putting up over 20 points, wasn't sustainable. Maybe it is. I mean, he's been by far and away the second best Maverick in this series. I'm going to key in on him a lot. You know that Luka's going to go off. You know that Porzingis is going to go off. You know that Jalen Brunson is going to do his thing. Let's see if Hardaway can keep it up. The Mavericks have all the momentum right now. This game is at the American Airlines Center. Yes, American Airlines sponsors 2 NBA stadiums. The American Airlines Arena is where the Miami Heat play. The American Airlines Center is where the Mavericks play. They have too much money. Look, the Mavericks are going to win tonight. They're going to put a stranglehold on this series. And you're going to start hearing a lot more speculation about Kawhi Leonard's future. In breaking NBA injury news, that really doesn't change much in terms of their current series, but it definitely changes things with their next series. Dante DiVincenzo suffered a serious tendon injury in his left foot. He will miss the rest of the playoffs. So that's why DiVincenzo only played 9 minutes yesterday. He did something to a tendon in his left foot. Doesn't mean much in terms of their series against the Heat. They're still going to win. They're going to win one more game. As for their inevitable series against the Nets, it could be worse. It could be Giannis. It could be Middleton. It could be Holiday. But DiVincenzo's a good shooter. He hasn't shown it in these playoffs, but he's a good shooter, and he's finding other ways to get involved. He's grabbed a lot of rebounds. You're going to see a lot more of Bryn Forbes now, let me tell you. And that's not a bad thing, because Forbes has been really good in this series. Game 2, he had 22 points. In Game 3, he had 11 points. He's known more as a defensive player. He actually had a streak of games from late April to early May, where in 7 straight games he scored at least 10 points. That's pretty impressive for a defensive stopper. DiVincenzo is more important to the Bucks than Green is to the Nets. But neither one of those injuries are cataclysmic. Both teams are still in good shape. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with Canadiens Maple Leafs. If you turned this game off when the Habs went up 3-0, I don't blame you. You figured, okay, the Canadiens are going to steamroll through this game. They're tired of being embarrassed. Maybe this will wake their offense up. You know what? We've got a series. But then the Leafs came back. Less than 2 minutes after Jesperi Kotkaniemi gave the Habs that 3-0 lead, Mitch Marner drew Carey Price out of position, and Zach Hyman was able to score. Then in the third period, right after a power play, Jake Muzzin from the point sniped home a shot that Carey Price never saw. Then 5 minutes later, Muzzin tied the game up. He deflected home an Alex Galchenyuk shot. I don't know how Muzzin got a piece of that. You could hear the entire province of Quebec just sigh. They said, Sacre bleu! We're really going to lose this series now. We can't even hold a 3-0 lead. Carey Price can't hold a 3-0 lead. He's shot. Forget about it. We can't beat our arch rivals. Then a minute into overtime, Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki take advantage of a bad Leafs pass. They get a 2-on-0 breakaway. It's a set play. Suzuki to Caulfield, back to Suzuki. Made it 4-3 Habs. There will be a Game 6. Bad job by both goalies. I'd say that Carey Price is better than this, but he really hasn't been that great all series. Jack Campbell definitely is, though. I don't want him to do what Marc-Andre Fleury has done. He's got to shut the door here. He's got to win Game 6 tomorrow. Don't let it get to a Game 7. Moving on now to Hurricanes Predators. A series that actually made NHL history. For just the third time ever, we saw a series have 4 straight overtime games. The home team had won all of those games. In fact, they had won every single game in this series. I thought that would hold. I picked the Predators in this game. I was looking pretty good after the Preds got a 3-1 lead. But the Hurricanes' power play stepped up. They made it 3-2. They got the Canes back in the game. Then with 6 minutes left to go, right off the face-off, Dougie Hamilton just gets lost. Jacob Slavin makes an excellent pass. Tied the game at 3. That's a set play. Great job by the Hurricanes defense. Great job by Brock McGinn in winning the face-off. Very underrated player. I like Brock McGinn. He killed the Islanders in the playoffs a couple years ago. Then, less than 2 minutes into overtime, Sebastian Aho deflected a puck past UC Saros. It was a nice shot by Jacob Slavin, but it wouldn't have gone in if not for Aho. Slavin really stepped up in this game. He was hurt for the first couple games of this series. He stepped up when the Hurricanes needed him. So, give him credit. This was a very impressive series win for the Hurricanes. They're a gritty team. They're a gutsy team. They find ways to win. I don't think they're going to beat the Lightning, but they'll make Tampa work. I will say this, though, about the second round. I really can't do any picks. The way that the NHL is doing the schedule is so dumb. I hate it so much. This is what they're doing. Game 6 of Leafs-Habs is going to start at 7:30 on Saturday. A half hour after that, Islanders-Bruins is starting. So how can I do a show with picks if I don't know what the 4 series are going to be? We only know 2 of them. We know Bruins, Islanders, and Hurricanes, Lightning. That's it. We'll find out late tonight who's going to go up against the Avalanche, the Golden Knights of the Wild, but we still won't know who's going to face the Jets. You may be asking yourself, well, Jacob, what if the Leafs win tomorrow? Are you going to do something on Monday? No, I'm not. It's Memorial Day. I have plans. I'm going to be out. You're actually not going to get a show on Memorial Day. You're not going to get a Yankees show. You're not going to get anything. So I don't think I'll be able to do picks for the NHL in the second round on this show. You'll get them on Twitter, though. Maybe. It all depends on what the second round schedule is. It hasn't been announced yet. The only thing we know is that Game 1 of Bruins-Islanders is going to start tomorrow at 8. That's it. That's literally all we know as far as the second round goes. So maybe I'll do second round picks on Twitter. Maybe. If it's conducive to it, I will. But I have no idea if it will be conducive. I just brought up Wild Golden Knights, so I'll preview Game 7 now. This is actually the first Game 7 that's going to be played in Vegas, ever. That's pretty cool. We'll get to witness history. It all rests on the goalies. It's on Cam Talbot and Marc-Andre Fleury. Whichever goalie steps up is going to go on to the second round. I know that's pretty obvious, but it's the truth. I can't make anything up. Early in this series, Marc-Andre Fleury was standing on his head. He was looking like 2009 Marc-Andre Fleury. He had only given up 4 goals in the first 4 games of this series. Only 3 of them came in regulation. Games 5 and 6, he's looked dreadful. He's given up 7 goals. Cam Talbot has stood on his head. He's only given up 2 goals. Both of them came in Game 5. The Golden Knights had a great opportunity to close this series out in Game 5. I thought they were gonna win that game. Then Game 6, you thought, okay, it's just a blip on the radar. The Golden Knights are gonna win it here. But no, the Wild have forced a Game 7, and anything can happen in a Game 7. You've got the red-hot Talbot versus the ice-cold Fleury. The Vegas crowd is going to be rocking. It wouldn't surprise me if either team won. But you know what? I think Fleury's going to stop the slide here. Let's go with Vegas. Like I said, no shows on Monday. I've got stuff going on. So, yeah, I'm taking a little bit of a long weekend. I'll be back on Tuesday with a regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show. And you know what? I'll give you a couple other updates. This was just finalized. On June 16th, you're going to get an interview that I'm going to do with Matt Frazier and Robert Cheek. They wrote a book about plant-based athletes. A lot of athletes nowadays are switching from a meat-heavy diet to a plant-heavy diet. It's going to be very interesting to talk to these two plant-based diet experts about that topic. Also, I'll tell you this now. From July 5th to July 9th, you're not going to get any shows. I'm taking that week off. Going to do some things with my parents that I've wanted to do for a while. It's going to be fun. I'm just taking that week off. Look, I usually don't take a lot of days off. I mean, during the height of the pandemic, I didn't take any days off. So I'm doing it now. I'll remind you about the interview and the week off as it gets closer. Until Tuesday, I am Jacob Valk saying, how could the home plate umpire be doing his job when he didn't throw me out of the game after the things that I said to him?